Hello Year 4, I'm here with your topic lesson for Monday the 18th of January. We're going to carry on finding out a little bit more about the Romans today. Let's see what our WALT is. Okay, we are learning to understand and explain the spread of the Roman Empire. The first thing I'd like you to do, please, as always, is pause the video, write your long date and your WALT, and underline them with a ruler, please. So last lesson, we talked about the Roman Empire and how it started in Rome in Italy. Have a look at that map, see if you can spot Italy. Hopefully you found it. The arrow makes it a little bit easier. It's the country that kind of looks like a bit of a high-heeled boot. That's how I always remember which one is Italy. But we didn't really talk, did we, about how Rome is thought to have begun. Now, there are stories and there are rumours, okay? And there is a well-known story called Romulus and Remus. You may or may not believe it. I'm not sure I'm convinced, but we are going to look at the story anyway. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and I'm going to start sharing the PowerPoint with you. See what you think. A long time ago, there was a king called Numitor who ruled an ancient city in Italy called Alba Longa. Numitor had a younger brother named Amulius, who one day uprose against Numitor and took over Alba Longa. However, Amulius did not want to cause any conflict. He didn't want to cause any trouble. So he killed Numitor's male heirs and forced Numitor's only daughter, Rhea Silvia, to vow not to marry or have children. Amulius was worried that Rhea would have a son who would eventually overthrow him. However, Rhea Silvia fell in love with Mars, the Roman god of war, and they had twin sons. Rhea Silvia had betrayed her vows, and the penalty was usually death. However, Amulius feared the wrath of Mars. He didn't want to be in trouble with Mars, and he did not want to kill Rhea Silvia. Instead, King Amulius imprisoned Rhea Silvia and ordered a servant to put the twins in the river Tiber. Amulius reasoned that if the twins were to die from the elements, the city would be saved from the angry god. When the servant reached the riverbank with the twins, he could not throw them in. So instead, he placed their basket into the river and let the current carry the basket in the hope that someone would see the twins and rescue them. Eventually, a she-wolf came across the basket in the river and pulled the babies out to safety. The wolf cared for the twins and protected them from dangers such as other wild animals. A friendly woodpecker helped the twins to find food. Soon the twins were found by a shepherd who was out walking by the river. He took the twins back home to his wife. They decided to call the boys Romulus and Remus. The shepherd and his wife brought the twins up like their own children. Romulus and Remus grew up to become shepherds like their father. One day, while the twins were herding their sheep, they were met by shepherds of King Amulius, who started a fight with Romulus and Remus. Remus was captured by the shepherds and taken to King Amulius. Romulus gathered a group of shepherds and set out to rescue Remus. King Amulius believed that Rhea Silvia's children were dead, though he did not recognize Romulus and Remus. Romulus managed to free his brother and in the process killed King Amulius. When the city learned who the boys were, they offered to crown them as joint kings. However, the twins turned down the crown because they wanted to found their own city. The twins left their hometown in search of a perfect place to build their city. They eventually came to the place where Rome is located today. They both liked the area, except they both wanted to build the city on a different hill. Romulus wanted the city to be on top of Palatine Hill, where Remus preferred Aventine Hill. They agreed to wait for a sign from the gods to determine which hill they should build their city on. Remus saw the sign of 6 vultures first, while Romulus claimed to have seen 12. Each claimed that they had won. Romulus ignored his brother and went on to build a wall around Palatine Hill. However, Remus was jealous and began to make fun of his brother. They ended up getting into a fight. Romulus killed Remus during the fight, and he was now to be the founder of his own city. With Remus dead, Romulus returned to where he started to build his wall on Palatine Hill and continued to build his city. He officially founded the city on April the 21st, 753 BC, making himself king and naming the city Rome after himself. He then began to organize his city. He divided his army into legions of 3,300 men. He called his 100 most noble men the patricians and the elders of Rome the Senate. The city grew and prospered into one of the most powerful cities in the world, and would be for another 1,000 years. Okay, do you think this story is true or false? I want you to have a think to yourself. What do you believe and why? Okay, we will probably all believe slightly different things, and that doesn't matter, but it's an interesting story nonetheless. So whether you believe the Romulus and Remus story, the Romans conquered many people and places in history. What does conquered mean? Pause the video for a moment and have a think about that word. What do you think it means? Conquered means to take control of a place or people by military force. Okay, so to force, to fight, to have control of a place or a group of people. So why do you think the Romans wanted to invade other people's land and conquer other people's land? So they had more and more land and more people for themselves. Pause the video again, please. Think about what are the reasons that somebody might want to do that. Right, there are several different reasons. The first one is for goods. Okay, they wanted to have more things such as lead, wood, tin, slaves, and gold. Okay, the more things they had, the richer they were in lots of different ways. The more slaves they had, the more things that could be done. They wanted to be more powerful. They wanted to conquer more and more countries and make their empire, the group of countries that they own, they wanted to make it bigger and make it more powerful. They were quite greedy for power. The third reason is for duty. The Romans believed it was their duty, it was something that they had to do to make the world civilized like them. They thought they were civilized, they thought they lived in the right way and that other people should live like them, and that it was their duty, something that they were honor bound to do, to make sure that other people lived in the same way they did, in what they thought was the right way to live. There's lots of different reasons why they wanted to conquer more land and more people. So let's see, how good do you think they were at conquering that land? Oh, what features do we notice on this map? We've got a key. It says land controlled by Celtic tribes. Land controlled by Romans. So the dark green is the Celtic tribes. The red is Romans. There's no red on here at the moment. And the light green is other people's land. And then down the bottom, we've got this timeline. So in 800 BC, we have got, this dark green here controlled by Celtic tribes. All of this light green controlled by other people. No land controlled by the Romans. Let's move on now. Let's move on to 237 BC. Now you will notice that the numbers are getting smaller. BC means before Christ. So we are getting closer and closer to Christ's birth. So time is getting later. It's a bit confusing. Even though the number gets smaller, time is getting later. We're getting closer to zero BC, when Jesus was born. On this map is 237 BC. We can see that there is more land now controlled by Celtic tribes. Celtic tribes have invaded the UK. They now control that land. This land here is now controlled by the Romans. What country have we got here? It looks a bit like a high-heeled boot. We talked about this earlier, didn't we? Hopefully you realise that that is Italy. And then this land here in the light green, all apart from this tiny little patch, is other people's land. Let's move on now. Let's see what happens next. Okay, we are now 133 BC, so time is getting later. We have got much more land controlled by Celtic tribes, and we have got much more land controlled by the Romans. Okay, they have invaded other parts of Europe, and they have also invaded what nowadays is the continent of Africa, just a little bit here at the top of Africa. Let's keep going. 44 BC, 44 years before Jesus was born, the Romans have now taken over much more of Europe and more of Africa. And the Celtic tribes, let's just compare. They've got less land, look. The Romans are taking land from the Celtic tribes. What do you think is the most significant thing about this map? Let's compare it to the last one again and look at how the Romans are spreading. How is their control spreading through Europe? Keep watching. Hopefully you might notice that the Roman control is getting closer to the UK now. Okay, in 44 BC, the Romans already ruled the country that we know today as France, but they called it Gallia. And that is just across the English Channel from the United Kingdom. So, next became Britain. 55 years BC before Christ was the first raid. The Roman general Julius Caesar came across the sea to Britain. He wanted to make Britain a part of the Roman Empire, and he brought with him 2 Roman legions. If you look down the bottom, it said there are 5,000 soldiers in a Roman army legion. How many soldiers did he bring then? 2 legions. 1 legion had 5,000 soldiers. He must have brought about 10,000 soldiers with him. The Celts were living in Britain. They fought back bravely, and despite the Romans winning several battles, they returned to France. In 54 BC, the second raid happened. 1 year later, Julius Caesar came back across the sea. This time he brought with him 5 legions. Oh, 5 times 5, that's 25. 25,000 soldiers and 2,000 cavalrymen. At the bottom it says here, cavalrymen were soldiers on horseback. He brought a lot of people with him. The Roman army fought in southeast England, and this time they got to the other side of the River Thames. Now the River Thames is the big river that runs through London. The British tribes agreed to pay tributes to Rome and were left in peace. Caesar did not think that Britain was worth a long war, and he had other problems in the empire to deal with. The Celts opened up trading links with the Romans, so we agreed that we would start working with the Romans. They left us alone. Okay, we're now in 43 AD, the third raid. Nearly 100 years later, the Romans returned. Emperor Claudius was now in charge, and he was determined to make Britain part of the Roman Empire. He sent General Aulus Plautius, apologies if I've said it wrong, Aulus Plautius, and 4 legions of soldiers, plus about the same number of auxiliary soldiers. Auxiliary soldiers were soldiers that were not Roman, so they got them from other places. They were split into 3 divisions, 3 groups. Many Celtic tribes realised how strong this Roman army was and made deals to keep the peace. Okay, they didn't want to fight such a strong army, so they made a deal with them. They agreed to obey, that means to stick to, Roman laws and pay taxes. In return, they were allowed to keep their kingdoms. We didn't have to give the kingdoms to the Romans. As long as we obeyed their laws and we paid taxes to them, we gave money to them. Okay, it's now 79 AD, so 79 years after Jesus was born. What can we say about the Celts in 79 AD? Oh, look at that map. What's happened now? The Romans actually control this bottom part of the UK now, don't they? They control the bottom part of the UK. The Celts control the top part. Okay, they also control Ireland, and they control this little patch here. So the Romans are getting more powerful. And finally, in the height of the Roman Empire in 305 AD, this is what happened. Look at the map. They control a large part of Europe, they control the top part of Africa, and they control the bottom half of the UK. Where are the most important cities in the UK? Where is London? Does anyone know? London is in the bottom part of the UK. So the Romans controlled London. Quite a lot of major cities are in the bottom part of the UK. There are lots of hills and more difficult terrain right at the top of Scotland. Okay, it makes it difficult to have really, really important cities up there. Lots of the important cities are further down in the UK, more towards the south of the country. Right, this map here shows the country boundaries, okay, the borders of the country as they were in 117 years AD. Now it says there, have a look at your atlas. You can't have a look at your atlas, so what you're going to do, you're going to have to pause the video and have a look at Google Maps. Can you work out which countries the Romans have conquered? So pause your video, look at Google Maps. Can you work out which countries the Romans have conquered? I'm not going to be able to show you because it's difficult to flip between the two. So pause the video, go to Google Maps. Which countries have they conquered? Have a little look. Okay, hopefully you've been able to work some of those out. The country boundaries will be different, okay? The areas of land which are owned by each country have changed over time. So you will find that the country's sizes and shapes are slightly different. So your task today, you need to use a blank map of Europe. We have given you one on your daily schedule that looks like this. And you need to colour the land that the Romans have conquered by 117 AD. So you will be able to use this picture here to help you colour in that land. Colour in the bits that the Romans have conquered. So you're going to have to draw lines to show, particularly on this bit here at the top of Africa, to show which bits of those modern day countries the Romans conquered. It says here, remember, some boundaries have changed. Next thing you need to do, go back to Google Maps. You are going to label the countries with their modern day names. You are going to use your ruler and you are going to draw a line from your map like this with your ruler. And then you are going to label the countries. United Kingdom. What did I forget to do? Hopefully you're all shouting at the screen at me now. What have I forgotten to do? It's a country name. I must use capital letters. United Kingdom. Okay. So you are going to label all of those countries that the Romans invaded. It says here, use your atlas to support you. If you've got an atlas, that's brilliant. You can use an atlas. Otherwise, please use Google Maps. Once you have done that and you have labelled your picture, you have got to imagine that you are a Roman soldier. And you need to explain in your words why you believe that conquering countries is so important. So put yourself in the shoes of this Roman soldier. Why does he believe conquering countries is so important? If you don't have a printer year 4, please don't worry. You won't be able to print off this map that we have given you. Instead, in your home learning book, you can just write me a list of the modern day names of these countries. Okay, and then you can do your Go Deeper task in your home learning book. So please don't panic if you don't have a printer. You will still get the same learning out of this lesson. Your steps to success then are to really, really carefully look at the map, Make sure you identify the right country names. Make sure you present your work really neatly with a ruler, and think about things from a Roman soldier's perspective. Put yourself into somebody else's shoes today. When you have finished that task, year 4, you need to pause the video and come back to me. Okay, well done for completing your work today, for completing your map and your paragraph from the perspective of a Roman soldier. So after today's lesson then, what are your thoughts about the Romans? Okay, we will all think slightly different things. They certainly weren't shy, were they? They were quite determined to conquer and to achieve their goals. Right, we are going to be learning more about the Romans next Monday. So I will see you for our next topic lesson next week. Take care. Bye.